An ongoing inability to pay utility bills or afford basic groceries exacts a physical toll on the human body. Chronic financial stress operates as an active catalyst for brain damage, fraying under tension the neural architecture required to process information. A study led by researchers at University College London, published in the journal Innovation in Aging, mapped exactly how this environmental pressure translates into biological decay. This cross-section model compares a healthy human brain with one subjected to persistent financial hardship. By age 70, individuals who experienced decades of economic struggle exhibit severe brain atrophy. Notice the expanded, fluid-filled cavities in the center. That ventricular expansion is a direct, observable marker of poor brain health. Those cavities only expand because the surrounding brain tissue is shrinking and dying off. Long before this tissue death becomes visible on an MRI in late life, the symptoms surface in behavior. By age 53, the individuals in this study were already demonstrating steep, measurable declines in processing speed and verbal memory. Chronic poverty functions as an active, cumulative neurotoxin. It drives a process of physical destruction that erodes brain matter over decades of exposure. The data for this research comes from the MRC National Survey of Health and Development. This specific dataset tracks 2,759 individuals born in 1946. It is the world's longest continuously running birth cohort study. Researchers have monitored these exact same people from the week they were born, tracking their physical and mental health for nearly 80 years. Over those decades, the research team repeatedly checked the participants' financial status at 4 specific milestones: ages 26, 36, 43, and 53. To quantify the struggle, the study established strict definitions. A person was classified as having a persistent low income if their earnings fell into the bottom 20% of the group during at least 2 of those life check-ins. Similarly, persistent hardship was defined by a high score on practical struggle metrics. This meant participants repeatedly reported finding it difficult to manage on their income or failing to pay basic utility bills. These individuals navigated their prime earning years during periods of intense systemic economic pressure in the UK, marked by volatile inflation, high food prices, and widespread labor disputes. Tracking nearly an entire human lifespan allows researchers to measure the effects of prolonged chronic poverty. This data accounts for sustained economic pressure, rather than single acute events like a temporary loss of employment. When analyzing the link between wealth and cognition, a critical question arises. Does financial stress actually damage the brain, or do individuals with lower cognitive abilities simply struggle to secure higher incomes? Standard psychological studies fail to answer this because they typically measure adults at a single snapshot in time. They look at a 50-year-old's income and their current test scores, with no knowledge of where that person started. The 1946 cohort bypasses this blind spot. Because these participants were tracked from birth, researchers had access to their baseline childhood cognitive tests and formal education levels long before any adult financial struggles began. This scatterplot maps the study's cognitive scores. To isolate the impact of financial stress, statisticians filtered out the advantages of a high childhood IQ, early education access, and childhood socioeconomic status. Even after completely removing the protective buffers of high early intelligence and formal education, the data held. Individuals who experienced financial hardship still exhibited a severe cognitive gap by middle age. The deficits recorded at age 53 represent a precipitous drop from a person's own established baseline. These individuals lost cognitive capacity they once possessed. The evidence points in one direction. Structural poverty actively drives cognitive decline. The data refutes the assumption that financial struggle is merely a byproduct of lower innate intelligence. Within the cohort, the rate of brain health deterioration was not uniform. Specific demographic and genetic variables acted as severe multipliers. Participants carrying the APOE epsilon-4 genetic variant, a known risk factor for Alzheimer's disease, experienced significantly steeper cognitive declines when exposed to financial hardship. There was also a stark gender disparity. Men in this specific cohort exhibited significantly worse cognitive outcomes stemming from financial struggle than women in the exact same economic brackets. To understand this gap, we must look at the sociological context. Men born in 1946 bore the intense environmental stress of being primary breadwinners. carrying the weight of their family's economic survival during mid-century recessions. This stress compounded with behavioral factors. Disadvantaged men in this era were far more likely to engage in neurotoxic coping mechanisms, reporting higher rates of heavy smoking and alcohol misuse. Genetic predispositions and societal pressures do not act in isolation. They serve as aggressive accelerators, taking the baseline damage of financial stress and multiplying its destructive impact on the brain's physical structure. How does an external socioeconomic event, like an overdue electricity bill, physically cross the blood-brain barrier and destroy a neuron? Biologists refer to allostatic load. This is the cumulative physical wear and tear on the body caused by chronic, unyielding stress. Chronic financial worry forces the body to constantly pump out stress hormones like cortisol. This chemical flood traps the immune system in a perpetual state of high alert, battering cells in a caustic environment. This constant state of biological panic triggers severe neuroinflammation. Inflammation is a mechanism known to actively accelerate cellular aging and degradation within the brain. Decades of this specific, unbroken inflammatory response lead directly to the visible brain shrinkage and tissue death observed in the MRI scans of the 70-year-old participants. The human stress response evolved for acute, short-term physical survival, running from a predator or surviving a harsh winter. When activated continuously for decades by financial insecurity, that exact same survival mechanism turns self-destructive. Beyond inflammation, a second biological mechanism drives this decay: cognitive load. The constant mental calculation of daily survival requires immense computational resources. Juggling debts, rationing food, and plotting how to avoid eviction are highly complex, demanding tasks. This chronic worry acts as a background process running constantly in the brain, monopolizing the person's working memory from the moment they wake up to the moment they sleep. This monopolization leaves a severely diminished bandwidth for other cognitive functions. The lack of available processing power matches the specific deficits in verbal memory and processing speed recorded by the researchers. Financial hardship starves the brain of its own processing power. The mind is left with insufficient resources to maintain healthy cognitive function, repair neural pathways, or learn new information. As the longitudinal study entered its later years, researchers recorded a counterintuitive data point. This graph plots cognitive decline over age. The line for the financially secure control group drops steadily, but look at the hardship group. Between the ages of 53 and 69, their memory performance actually declined more slowly than their financially secure peers. The researchers identified this as a floor effect. The financial strain had already caused such devastating cognitive losses prior to age 53 that the damage was largely complete. The hardship group simply had less baseline cognitive function left in later life compared to the control group, who were only just beginning to experience standard age-related decline. Alleviating chronic poverty and reducing financial hardship requires a shift in perspective. It operates outside the bounds of standard economic policy. Ensuring people can afford to live is a critical frontline neurological intervention necessary to prevent cognitive collapse in an aging population.